I'm Simon DeDeo. I was trained as a physicist, although actually, like Sean, I realized that all my degrees are in astronomy as well. And I did cosmology at U Chicago, which is where I met Sean. And while I was at Chicago, I became increasingly interested in branching out. I had read, of course, many of the books written by people in this room. And I ended up doing a lot of work in animal and human behavior and ended up at the Santa Fe Institute. And it's much easier to study human behavior because humans leave records of their behavior everywhere. And because I was a cosmologist, I had no problem studying historical events that I couldn't do experiments on, or social systems that are so large you can't do experiments on. So I had none of the, I never work in a lab. I don't see why you need to work in a lab to learn about the world. And so, yeah, having grown up as a physicist, I was a Platonist, or I probably still am. And one of the things I do when I work on social systems is I try to take the methods and ontologies of physics very seriously. And in physics, of course, you can have objects and believe they have no composite parts, and then later you discover they have composite parts. And this is not distressing at all, that you discover the proton is not an elementary particle. So when you come to study social systems, often, and I should say, when I was an undergraduate, I took a class with Hilary Putnam, who I didn't know this, but he was a functionalist, and I didn't know you had to invent functionalism. It just seemed so obvious that it had to be true that the brain was a computer and that you should understand thoughts, mental states, the sort of objects of moral intuitions as computations. And so it was striking to me that it had to be invented by somebody, and that person was in the room. And
given the audience in the room, in this particular room,
yes.
You should explain what functionalism is.
Oh, okay. That's a tough one.
I just gave the introductory lecture on this subject in my intro course, so I could do it.
Well, I'll say
anyone can explain it.
Anyone can explain it, but the idea that mental states, what we consider to be the act of thinking, is multiply realizable in different objects as long as the structure of that object has the subparts of that object have the same functional rules as the original, let's say, brain that you're modeling. It's, I think, the intuition behind why we think artificial intelligence is possible.
So thought is the same thing whether it happens in a brain or in a computer.
Exactly. So there's all sorts of, I take your neurons, I slowly replace them by small silicon chips that do the same thing. I make it Bluetooth, I take a little box, that's your brain. Right, all the things that are performing the computation. The biology, the I/O is sort of extraneous. What was striking,
but maybe it matters how they're embedded in the world, right? So it's just mere structural isomorphism is probably not enough.
So this was actually it. So the fact A, that it had to be invented, and the fact B, that he was now talking about the twin Earth thought experiment, which we can talk about as well. But the idea that actually this might not be true, that thinking just ain't in the head, was his phrase.
Does it imply we should be nice to computers?
Well, so this is an excellent question. So this will maybe get to what seems to me to be this strange fact about naturalism. I think if you are a naturalist, you take a essentially functional position. If I download you into your computer, I have to treat that computer with respect. I can't delete you. But when I came to study social systems,
Some people to delete.
I would archive all of you. But no, so one of the things that's striking is, okay, fine, if the brain is a computation, I can find lots of computations in social systems. And I think, first of all, this is the solution to some of Putnam's objections to pure internal functionalism. But when I study a social system, I sort of reverse engineer it. I try and find the underlying computation. Sometimes those computations involve multiple brains at the same time. And that to me seems very strange. So there's a computation that floats around that's not attached to any particular person. What's it like to be that computation? And I don't have a good answer for that.
Why does it have to be like anything to be that computation?
Well, I know what it's like to be me. I feel, although it's funny, we talk about the Buddhist intuitions. One of my students, I was trying to explain what I was going to say to you guys to her. And she has studied a lot of Eastern philosophy, and none of this made sense to her. The intuition that there are mental states, that mental states have functional relationships to each other. And so I had a conversation with somebody who claimed not to have mental states, which is the opposite of the zombie intuition, where everyone's trying to convince you they do have mental states and experiences of what it is like to be somebody. So in any case, that it's sort of a roundabout way to say that I do a lot of mathematics in the social sciences, but I do it from as if I was a physicist. So I use tools like group theory. If you go into the social sciences from what you might call the hard sciences, everyone expects you to be very good at predicting things because that's the gold standard. If you can predict how an organism is going to behave, then they think you know what it means. And I tend to focus much more on explanation. So that's one of the sort of distinctions that I make whenever I have to explain what I do in a pedagogical system. So in any case, yeah, I suppose if I was willing to give something up or what I might be willing to change my mind on, if you have courage, you should be willing to change your mind on something that you couldn't imagine changing your mind on. And so the idea that you can have a scientific theory of mentality, of thought, of consciousness that didn't simply reduce to a story about computation, about the functional relationships between different parts of your brain, if that were possible, if it were possible not to believe that and yet not to believe in mysterious mind mist that penetrates and has special relationships to neurons or to some biochemical phenomenon, if it were possible to believe that without being supernatural, I would love to. And then it would solve a lot of my problems about, for example, joint computations and what is it like to be a conversation.